Folks, this will be a good 2-minute warning for you. We'll go in 2 minutes.
Yeah, chair, like you said. I don't, I just want you to check the shot. Can you do that? You calm down. Dude. Across the Nebraska. What do you think? That's where you need to go. That's where you need to go.
I need a wider sent out, guys.
I was just going to focus.
Check, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, check, check, check. All my peeps. Just getting practice, you know.
4 bars.
All right,
Are we ready? Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Devine. The name is spelled J-O-S-H, last name D-E, capital V as in victory, I-N-E. I'm a public information officer for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. As you know, our Amber Alert is ongoing, and it has been several days since anyone has seen Elizabeth Thomas or Tad Cummins. Our concern is growing by the moment. We want her home. We want him in custody. At this point, we've received about 175 tips into the TBI, but none at this point has produced a credible sighting. At this time, we are going to open the floor to Jill Cummins. She is the wife of Tad Cummins. Let me say this to the media. We will be offering no questions with her. She wants to deliver a statement, and then she'll leave the room. But we wanted the public, we wanted Tad to hear directly from her. Jill.
Good afternoon. Like so many of you, I'm deeply troubled by what has happened in the past few days. I certainly can't begin to explain why I think this occurred, but I do know one thing. I had no idea my husband was involved with anything that could have led to all of this. My heart breaks for the family of Beth Thomas. I want her home just as much as the rest of you, but I'm also very worried about Tad. To that end, let me speak directly to my husband. Tad, this is not you. This is not who you are. We can help you get through this. No matter how far you've gone or what's happening right now, God's grace is sufficient for you, and He wants you to come home. Your family wants their Poppy back. Please do the right thing and turn yourself into the police and bring Beth home. To those of you in the media, thank you for helping to spread the word. Help us to get this message out as far as we can, because we need help to find Tad and Beth and to bring them home safely. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Jill. And just for some additional context for you, the gentleman who is standing by her is Stephen Morgan, the family pastor. There has been some additional development in terms of the charges in connection with this investigation, and to share those details, here's the District Attorney General.
I'm Brent Cooper, B-R-E-N-T, C-O-O-P-E-R, District Attorney for this district. Today, after meeting with Detective Albright and going over all the evidence in the case, and especially considering the length of time that has passed with no one hearing from Ms. Thomas or Mr. Cummins, it was my decision to authorize Detective Albright to seek an additional warrant for Mr. Cummins. That charge is for aggravated kidnapping, and that offense is a Class B felony that carries 8 to 12 years if there's a conviction. I would also like to state for Mr. Cummins that in that law, that the aggravated kidnapping statute, there's a provision that says if the offender voluntarily releases the victim, or if he provides information that leads to her safe return, that is a mitigating factor. In other words, that's something that will be weighed in his favor if he does that. So there is incentive for him, even though this is a serious charge. His actions from this point forward can determine just how serious the outcome is. So again, as I've said earlier, I urge Mr. Cummins to pick up that phone, to call someone, law enforcement, family member, anyone, and let us know where you are so we can get Beth back to her family and so you can start dealing with the consequences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General. In light of the new charge that the General has announced, I do want to let you know that the TBI is in the final stages of adding Tad Cummins to the top 10 most wanted in Tennessee. We'll send out a press release with that information, but that also now attaches a $1,000 reward for any information leading to that individual's capture. As I indicated, we have received a shockingly low number of leads in connection to this Amber Alert, which leads us to believe one of two things. Either these individuals are outside of the public view right now, or they are outside the original net that we cast, which was alerting law enforcement and the public primarily across the Southeast. With that in mind, we need more tips. And I know when we have these missing kid situations, it can feel like, for folks sitting at home, well, what do I do? What can I do? That's not my community. Those aren't my people. Well, most of us these days have social media networks. And to that end, the TBI has this graphic. It's on our Facebook page right now, facebook.com/TBinvestigation. You see the pictures of the individuals. You see a picture of the vehicle in question. Most importantly, you see contact numbers. If you happen to be anywhere in this country driving down the road and find yourself behind that silver Nissan Rogue 2015 with the Tennessee license plate 976ZPT, call 911. In that type of an instance, time is absolutely of the essence. If you have information about these two, perhaps you saw them in the weeks leading up to all of this, call 1-800-TBI-FIND. The TBI has been doing a lot of work to try to understand these individuals' movements in the weeks prior to the Amber Alert. We've developed some information and have obtained some new pictures of Tad Cummins that will soon release to you, captured on surveillance at a local Walmart store. Hopefully those pictures will give you a more current understanding of what we believe Tad Cummins could look like, but please bear in mind, it's been 4 days since they've been missing. They may have changed their hairstyle. He may have shaved. There's a whole host of options out there. We have no idea where these individuals could be right now. This is a dire situation for this young girl. We need the public's assistance, not just in Tennessee, not just in the Southeast, but across this nation. At this point, we'll take questions.
Josh, yesterday you used the term sexual exploitation. Can you elaborate on exactly what you mean by that?
Well, the charge initially was sexual contact with a minor, but General, perhaps you could speak to some of those issues?
Well, exploitation is an offense that's separate from kidnapping or the sexual contact statute that was charged. I believe Mr. Devine was using that term yesterday in the sense that Mr. Cummins may be exploiting her for his own personal benefit, not for, as we generally think of exploitation cases where pictures are shared or videos or things like that. We don't believe that's what's going on here. We don't have any proof that's what's going on, but I think it was meant more in the term of him using her for himself.
Do you
Certainly,
believe
I
there's a,
appreciate, let me just speak to that briefly, if I could. Thank you for the clarification. When we were talking about that, we definitely wanted to make the point that we've been able to develop in our investigation a pattern of troubling behavior that leads us to believe that this girl is in imminent danger, which is why we issued an Amber Alert. So when we're talking about potential exploitation, as the general indicated, it's not necessarily in that criminal charge type category, but in a general sense. We have real concern for her well-being right now. Does that make sense? Great.
when you say you have concern for her well-being, is there a concern for her physical well-being? Is it she may be physically harmed, hurt, injured,
Certainly.
killed?
That's the threshold for issuing an Amber Alert. They are reserved in the state of Tennessee for the most dire of situations in which we have an imminent and immediate concern for a child's physical well-being.
And maybe the general might be able to speak more about this, but what specific evidence, was there material evidence that you guys were considering in this elevation to the aggravated kidnapping charge, or did it just have to do with the amount of time that has passed? What specifically were you looking
Well,
at?
I'm not going to go into what the specific evidence was, but it is based on the review of specific evidence that's been obtained. I'm not going to go into what that is, but the fact that it's been now 4 days and no one, despite all of the effort that's been put into finding these two people, all the media coverage, all the law enforcement hours, you factor all that together, that no one's seen them, or not. We haven't had any credible leads. No one's heard from them. This 15-year-old girl hasn't called anyone in her family in 4 days. No one's heard from her. You just add that along with the pieces of evidence that we reviewed today, and I was comfortable with the finding that we now have probable cause for aggravated kidnapping.
There has been some discussion over the past few days of whether this girl willingly went with this gentleman. Does that mean the evidence that you have now reviewed, there's some indication that there may be some unwillingness on her part?
Well, again, I think when you add all of the proof together, I think you can certainly find that Mr. Cummins, I guess the correct term is that he more or less overbore her will. This is a 15-year-old child that's led a very difficult life, and basically going against a 50-year-old man who's college educated and has the life experiences he did. And you add that to the evidence that we've seen, and I believe it's clear that at this point her removal by him was unlawful. And what makes it aggravated is that he was in possession of firearms. So we know he had firearms with him. To our knowledge, he still has those firearms. So that the firearms elevates it to aggravated kidnapping.
Do you feel like more should have been done to see this? Someone should have seen it before it happened. The school district should have taken action. Is there anything from that perspective you can weigh in?
I don't have any comment on the school board or anything they may have done. I'm just not really clear on their timeline or how or what they did. But in all of these cases, you wish that something had happened before it reached the level of criminal charges. But who's to blame for what happened in this case? I think it's impossible to say, because I don't think anyone saw this coming. I don't think anyone had any idea that Mr. Cummins and Ms. Thomas may disappear like that.
In speaking to some of her friends today, they have elaborated that this was kind of a relationship where he was posing as more of a mentor to her, and then it evolved. Do we have any idea how long they had this relationship and when it would have initiated?
It's still very much part of our investigation, but again, there are a lot of opportunities right now to start Monday morning quarterbacking this situation. Fundamentally, the priority is bringing these individuals home. There are plenty of times that we can ask those questions, and in fact, the sheriff's office still very much has an open and ongoing investigation in that regard. The priority right now is finding these individuals. Are there clues, perhaps, in those early stages that might lead us to where there are? You better believe it, which is why that's part of our work right now. But again, the priority is bringing them home right now.
And Josh, you mentioned these new perhaps surveillance pictures taken at a Walmart. Were these taken of the two of them after the last cited seeing it Monday morning, or were these beforehand?
No, Jason, these are going to be pictures taken a few days before. I just saw them briefly before I walked into the room. They just show Mr. Cummins. Anything further? Okay. Well, again, let me say this to the folks in the media. When we're talking about Amber Alerts, this is not just a law enforcement and public thing. It's a law enforcement, public, and media thing. We cannot do this without you. We need this story to go national. I'm just going to say it. They could be anywhere. It's a needle in a haystack. And unfortunately, right now, no news is bad news. But we're committed, not just the TBI, but the District Attorney General's Office, the FBI, local law enforcement, and plenty of people across this country are holding out hope and praying for this girl's safe return. We're absolutely committed to this one for the long haul. Thanks so much for being here today.